In this tutorial, I'll be using physics and gravity simulations to place objects realistically around this scene using the new Scatter add-on from KIRI Engine. To get us started quickly, I won't be going over the full add-on use in this video. For features other than the physics tools, check out our other videos or the add-on documentation. The base scene and the assets used in this video all come from the incredible source that is Polyhaven. There's links in the description to this scene, but you can use any scene or models that you want. So I have this beautiful moon scene from Polyhaven, and to really demonstrate scattering, I've made a version of this scene with all the rocks and already scattered components removed. So I have a nice clean moon surface here, and if I look under the moon, and we've got some small decimated rocks, and we've got some bigger decimated rocks. We want to add these to our scatter input collection. So I'm going to open the scattering add-on by pressing N on my keyboard to bring up the end panel and find KIRI Scatter. And we're creating an input collection. So I jump on to the input tab and I'm going to use what I have selected. So if I select a rock and another rock, I can see it shows up in the list here. I could link these one by one and populate our scatter collection, or I can select them all and link all to collection at once. Now that we have our scatter collection built, we can jump on over to the scatter side of the add-on. We're using our physics feature, and the first submenu we see is helper objects. If I place my 3D cursor somewhere I can see, and I press plus next to spawner, I can see a new object has been added. I could move my 3D cursor somewhere else, press spawner again, or press any of the other physics helpers, and those objects will be added to the scene and added to the collection that we can see down below. We can quickly select any of these just by clicking on their names. And if we decide we don't want one of these in our scene, just press the trash icon. I'm going to start with one spawner for now, and I'm going to place it a little bit above the surface of the ground. If I have the spawner object active, I'll see its active settings down here. And I can see we've got a source, which is currently empty, spawn objects, and select children. We can access more spawn settings if we go to the spawn settings tab here. I know I want to spawn any of the rocks from the input collection that we created earlier. So I'll change the source to collection. And then if I press the button spawn objects, I can see that a rock has appeared in the location of the spawner. If I press spawn objects again and again, we keep spawning new rocks. Now, if I make sure that my timeline has some length, let's make it nice and long for the simulation. Let's say 1 to 1,000 frames, why not? And I go to frame 1 and press play. I can see that our rocks actually have some physics. If I keep playing, they're not exactly doing what I want just yet, and they're going through the floor into the infinite void. So how are we going to fix that? First thing, let's go to our collisions menu and let's add a quick floor. And now if I play back again, I can see that the rocks are now colliding with this floor, but their behavior is still a little bit crazy. If I look at them closely, I can see that we have this circle around each of them. And this is actually our collision cage, or the shape of our collisions. And I can see if I select one, I can see that for this rock, it's sphere. For this rock, it's sphere. For all of them, it's sphere, because in spawn settings, we have collision shape set to sphere. Let's get rid of these rocks. Let's change collision shape to convex hull. And let's press spawn objects again. And press play. And that's much more like the behavior I expect. We can see when we select the spawn object that there's an offset count value. Every time we click spawn objects, this number increases and the object being spawned is spawned above the other objects. This is to make sure that they aren't all spawned in the same location and explode as soon as we press play. I'm going to quickly select the children of this empty with select children, and I'm going to delete these rocks, and I'm going to reset the count back to 0 there. In spawn settings, let's try increasing the spawn count to maybe 5. And let's add some random rotation to each spawned rock. And they'll stay as instances for performance. And they're going to be parented to this empty object. Now if I press spawn objects, we have a bunch of rocks. And I can actually see that there is a little bit of intersection here. Sometimes intersections can occur. The system's not perfect, but it will try to auto-detect these. I could move that out a little bit. And now if I press play, looking good. I can continue while the timeline is playing to spawn objects. And if I see any freezes like this, I can force a reset of the scene in the scene settings and the refresh button. And that's looking great. They're actually scattered in a nice, organic kind of fashion. So if I select children and I hit apply, these objects no longer have physics and they're locked in the scene. Now for some fun stuff. Let's look at interactive physics. I'm going to select my spawn object and start interactive physics. When I press this, I can see some help text appears at the top. Control-Shift-H to bring up help for the active tool. I have a spawner selected. If I press Control-Shift-H, I can see that Control and left click will spawn objects, and Control and down will toggle gravity. Let's try spawning some objects with Control and left click. And I can move the spawner and click again, and Control and left click, move it, Control and left click, Control and left click, and I can just keep doing this. And if any point you find your scene is starting to get a little sluggish, we can go to the scene tab and we can actually decrease the substeps per frame. Let's try 3, and solver iterations also 3, and that should help speed things up. It's usually a good idea after making changes here to press the refresh button for the scene physics. And let's play. And you'll notice that before we had rocks here, rocks here, rocks here, and then when I refreshed the scene, they all went to a single point above the spawner. That's because in our spawn settings, we have parent to helper enabled. Let's delete these rocks. And let's disable parent to helper. And I'm going to reset the Z offset for the spawner and start interactive physics again. As you can see, the Z offset is getting pretty high. And since I'm not parenting the rocks to the spawner, I can actually reset the count and it should be fine. There should be no explosions. And the timeline reset there. And you can see that back at frame 0, our rocks have retained the position that they were originally spawned at. They're no longer parented to this helper object. And if I press play and I decide that I like the scattering of these objects, I can select them and I can make sure one of these is active, and I can press apply, and it'll take a moment since there's a lot. And there we go. Physics has now been applied, and you can see this little guy escaped us. Let's delete him. We can see that we've quickly arranged these rocks in a much more organic fashion than I would be able to manually in such a short time. Now let's take a look at using forces, Luke. So in helper objects, I'm going to spawn a gravity well, and I'm going to place it kind of near my spawner. doesn't need to be super close. And I'm going to make sure that I actually have spawned some objects in the scene. Okay, great. And I have my force object here. And if I play, currently nothing's happening. What happens if I enable force and play? Oh, now we can actually pick up our objects with this gravity well. And if I place it somewhere and I disable force, we drop them. For gravity wells, the force strength is negative the strength minimum maximum. So currently this is set to 500. So when I enable force, it will be negative 500. If I set this to positive and I play back and I enable force, I can see that we're pushing everything away. Okay, now let's start interactive physics. And, oh, I forgot to turn forces off for this guy, so everything's exploding. Okay, interactive physics is enabled. I have a force object selected. I'll press Ctrl-Shift-H. I can see Control and left click will toggle the force, so turn it on and off. So if I Control and left click, oh, there we go. If I change this to negative, let's go back to the start. Control and left click. Very cool. And it's looking very elastic now because we changed the strength to 2000. Let me just disable the force, change that back to 500. Interactive physics, control and left click. Move the gravity well, control and left click to drop. Control and left click to pick them up. Control and left click to drop. Very cool. And we can switch between spawning with control and left click from the spawner and picking up with the force objects, control and left click, and then dropping, and then maybe applying. Oh, our timeline reset there. Let's apply these guys. They are applied. Let's select the spawner, control and left click. And with the force, control and left click. And let's drop them over here. And while we're on the moon, it would be crazy if we didn't mention gravity. So if I start playing back the simulation and press disable gravity, I can see we're getting something happening here. And it's very subtle because we don't have much force acting on these guys. If I go back to the start frame, I can see that they don't drop, they just float off into space. And this would be a great way to quickly build a space scene or some asteroids or something like that. And while in interactive physics, I can use control down to toggle gravity on or off. At any point I can toggle gravity on or off. I can control left click to use this force. I can spawn more rocks. I can turn the force off. I can turn gravity back on. And we have our wind and vortex forces as well. Let's try adding a vortex force here. Enabling the force and playing back. And if we look from top view, we can see that these objects are going to start to swirl around. Let's disable gravity so they don't have any friction. Go back to the start. And we can see it's pretty fast. And if I enable forces for the gravity well as well, they'll slowly start to get sucked into there. If at any point when you're using the physics engine, you find that you're changing settings, but nothing's happening and it's staying the same as it was before, jump into the scene tab and remember to press this little refresh icon here. It'll try and force reset the cache for the physics scene. And if you want to find out more about the click features of the add-on, you can check out our other videos on our video channel, or you can check out the add-on documentation. If you need any help with the add-on, don't hesitate to send me a message on our Discord. And if you would like some free 3D scanned assets, or you want to create your own, you can check out the KIRI Engine app or website.